Alright, I thought I would make a video because I've been looking back on my life and so on, and like I've done some wrong things, I guess. But I'm very meme or memetically oriented on a spiritual level. Like memes and culture and fiction has always been somewhat of a driving influence up until the recent history, since I had my midlife crisis. And that was about when I was 32 to now, basically. So it's been like a 7-year long midlife crisis. But I'm pulling out of it gradually, and like the downward spiral is slowing a little bit, and I'm beginning to climb back up, basically, or something like that. We're just about to, or something like that. I'm not sure. I'm just on the edge of like not going down, staying stable, and going back up. But I just realized I've lived the barbarian warrior lifestyle. Like, other people talk about the barbarian warrior mindset and they'll work out and lift weights and stuff like that. But like, I've lived a barbarian warrior mindset. I didn't LARP it. I didn't like. I mean, I sort of talked about it while it was happening, or like after the thing happened, or something like that. But I've lived facing death, like hugely, like literally bullets, blades, cars. Like, holy crap, dude. 46 near life-threatening incidents, like every 2 weeks for a period of time for a while. Like, it's like over the course of about 3 years. And it's just like, holy crap, I did that. Like I've lived bleeding from the head and like smashing my enemy's head into the concrete out of revenge for making me bleed. I've lived being shot in the guts, which hurt like hell. It wasn't just the shredding of intestines physically, it was the burning hot ball of lead searing my insides. Like, I've lived with a knife stuck in my chest. Like, I've lived with a pierced lung for a day before going to the hospital, not because I was afraid of dying, but because the pain was annoying and I decided I wasn't going to die. Now, this is a crossroads between the barbarian warrior mindset and a certain sort of paladin-ish moral code from Dungeons and Dragons, perhaps. Basic fantasy sort of tropes. But I've lived it. If you go back to my video, Battle Scars, showing Battle Scars Fighting Sin, or my Battle Scars Fighting Sin, it's like the 6th or 7th earliest video I made. So it's like, if you click oldest video and then you go to the one that says Battle Scars Fighting Sin, I show my scars as best as I can with my crappy webcam and stuff like that. So it's not that visible. It's been about 7 years since the wounds, or 6 years since the wounds were first made. They're beginning to fade a little bit, but they're still visible a little bit. And they're all centered around my chest right about here. And there's like a big scar on my stomach where they cut me open and so on. Now, I can't take credit for enduring the scar where they cut me open, but the bullet that entered me that caused them to cut me open to save my life in the guts, I didn't. I did endure. So I'm like I'm actually, when I look back on it, I'm actually tested morally, physically, mentally, willfully, soulfully, like all of this stuff. You know, and you can argue I'm schizophrenic possibly, and that, you know, fear of damnation from God is not real or something. You can argue that if you want, but it's real to me. And in my beliefs at the time, they've changed over the years. In my beliefs at the time when schizophrenia first hit, or the psychotic break first hit, you know, it's kind of like an uncontacted tribe first being hit by smallpox. You know, you don't have a resistance to it. But over the years, I've gradually gathered a resistance to the psychotic episodes, or whatever you want to call them, and so on. Yeah. As a product of my 130 IQ, I suppose, and INTP nature, I just naturally sort of gravitated away from psychotic episodes more and more as time progresses, and just sort of shrugged it off more and more. You get used to it, basically. Sort of is how to put it, in a way. From when it first starts, after you've lived three-quarters of your life without having to worry about it whatsoever. So a totally radical shift in relationship to the world and so on. I will say, in a way, I'm thankful for schizophrenia, in a sense, because it taught me the value of the interpersonal and the moral, whereas mechanistic and utilitarian before, primarily. And it taught me the value of interpersonal and moral relations by believing in God for real, finally. So it's a quite a trip, you know. It's a new side to life that I hadn't expected. You know, I could get by and do the mechanistic utilitarian sort of lefty coded sort of world, and I could avoid paying for my sins and just not talking about them and so on. But then schizophrenia hit, and I was possessed by a deep desire to repent, basically. You know, I don't know if this is going to happen or not, actually, but I think it might be part of the process by which I get the love of my life and a decent career and so on. Now, I've always been a tough person to some extent. Ever since the first fight I've been in on some level. You know, the first fight I was in, I think there was a big kid when I was like 5, and they were like 7 or 8, and like they tried to steal my water pistol from me because he just wanted it or something, and I like squirted him in the face, and then he like broke the water pistol or something. Like it was like a little MP5 submachine gun, patterned water pistol, or water gun rather. That was like orange or something like that. You know, so I can remember that. But I think I hit him on the head with the water pistol as well. I can't remember for sure. But that's, you know, and when he pinned me down, I shot him with the water pistol just to piss him off, and I like smacked him on the head with the water pistol. And then he broke it and then like went off on his way and so on. So ever since my first fight even, I've been a rather combative individual who's not necessarily afraid to up the ante when someone is hostile for a bad reason that I think of. Right and wrong matters a lot to me. I haven't always been right. I've failed my own moral codes in the past somewhat heavily, very heavily even. And that's one of the reasons why I was so driven by the belief in God to repent through game end attempts. And I survived it all. And it's like, okay, now I can look back on it and I go, okay, I did the tough part. I faced my death. I held true to the maxim, the wages of sin are death. And I survived through it all 46 times. Heroic attempts at game end, basically. And I know heroic and game end don't necessarily go together that well. But you know what I mean? You got to respect the hustle of 46 attempts just to pay for something you did when you were 13 or something. Like, you know, it's kind of like, okay, you know, how far does this morality go exactly? You know, so it's like, okay, I have achieved a set of experiences that most people will never have themselves. Almost anyone, basically. You know, we're talking like a Roman legionary over 25 years gets this much, maybe, level of experience. In the ancient world, when war and battle were constants. You know, like, it hasn't been done for ages. You know, this is some freakish stuff that, like, it's not that I'm as intense as Roy Benavides. Look him up, he's really amazing. It's not that, but, like, the overall amount of times I've done it, when you combine all of it and the dangers I've faced, combined over a longer period of time, match Roy Benavides' experience in one go. And that's actually something that I'm like, I'm looking at that and I'm just like, you know, like I've lived it. Like, I could spend the rest of my day dressing up with like a flower in my hair or something like that. You know, a pretty pink petunia or something like that. You know what I mean? And like people could judge me for my looks all they wanted, but I know I'm manlier than they are by a long shot, even with that, right? Like, it's like I don't need to necessarily perform the masculine role particularly that much because I've lived it. It's not LARPing for me because the role play isn't there. Because I lived it. The live action was there. It's all live action experience. It's not role play. Except for possibly thinking I was somehow so evil. I couldn't figure out how, but God seemed to be saying through my schizophrenia that it was the case. And I was like, well, God's God and He would know better than I do. So I trust God and, you know, I'll obey and so on. One of the things to look for possibly in the future maybe is that at some point a woman might come into my life who I've met before and we'll form a lasting relationship together. That's something of a prediction that I'm willing to make because it was referenced a number of times by some people that were spooky in their knowledge of the future in details, specifics, but also simple English, plain English. Like knowing who wins the 2016 election, the 2020 election, and the 2024 election back in 2006 or something. Like stuff like that, basically. I don't know for sure if this woman's going to come back to me or not. I don't know. But I think she will. Um, um, However, there is a drawback to this process, and basically, it upset my work-life balance and mentality into becoming OCD, morally, religiously, scrupulosity, and so on. And there's a difficulty in getting back to a proper work-life balance, and trying to figure out the exact proper way to go forwards in life after such. I'm not going to lie, they were traumatizing events to some extent, but getting over the trauma and so on, so that I can be an enjoyable figure to listen to and so on. And I'm making this video for posterity and so on. But I believe I'm beginning to get over it. God is training me specifically, personally, I think, to be an ultimate example of the highs and lows of life in the modern age, as a success story eventually, so that I can be a beacon to people to say, no matter how dark it gets, the light will win in the end. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. I don't know if I'm going to die a failure and like be honored in heaven for my life lived and my moral choices when I was under psychotic episodes. Because like the psychotic episodes weren't like, it wasn't like DeCarlos Brown Jr. It wasn't like, oh, I got a white woman, ha ha ha, I'm so great. It was more like thinking I'm the Antichrist. And I was like, well, God says I'm an Antichrist. I know what needs to be done. Remove myself from the existence. And that was like my moral choice. I know that doesn't sound like a very healthy thing or something to emulate necessarily or something like that. But the reason why I bring it up as a positive in a sense is because it shows my moral code in a way that is embodied by the scars on my chest. Um, you know, um, and that's the reason why I would say I would be honored in heaven, basically, and so on. Because regardless of whether anyone else knows this or not, or notices or cares or anything like that, God will care. And whether I don't know if I've been influential in the move against leftist totalitarianism, although I certainly tried to be, by warning people ahead of time about it. I might have had some success there. I don't know if I'm successful in getting their attention nowadays, or if my psychotic break made them distrust me completely going forwards. I don't know if I'm just spurging out into the void and no one cares. I do spurg out a lot, though. However, that brings me to the thing I mentioned that was a bit of a problem earlier. which is that the religious and moral scrupulosity in OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, coupled with a slight manic depressive bipolar kind of element to me, um, slight, you know, um, leads me to this constant fear that I need to save the world, and if I don't, then the world's going to end and it's going to be my fault. It's not even necessarily like, oh, if I save the world, I'll get the greatest accolades ever, and so on. Although that was one of my beliefs, possibly, um, of cashing in based on reputation and good works and so on, um, and so on. Um, but that didn't pan out. So basically, now I'm like driven by a feeling of duty, essentially, rather than opportunity. And the thing is, Charlie Kirk's martyrdom basically did almost everything I could possibly want for a resistance to leftist tyranny and totalitarianism and chaos and anarchy and riots and murders and theft and stuff like that and rapes and so on. Um, it's it. I've been edging towards this position more and more as time progresses. That I'm less and less necessary for this process of discovery and um, learning and defining things accurately and choosing the right character types for power in positions of power and so on as time progresses, and more people who are better put together um, instinctively as opposed to intellectually and habitually. um, they're instinctually and habitually, whereas I'm intellectually and obsessively moral people. I have to work on being extra moral. They're just naturally that way, basically. It's kind of how to approach that one. Um, but over the past 10 days or so, I presaged one of Nick Freitas' videos on some level 3 days in advance. About a week later, I presaged Oren McIntyre, and I presaged Feral Historian's video on rising powers and what happens after the war and so on, after the Great War to end all wars kind of thing, and building society from the remnants of what came before. And these are things I was already talking about on some level on my Twitter. So I know that I'm ahead of the curve. But man, is it ever stressful trying to stay ahead of that curve. Yeah, and I'm spurging out, I'm spamming almost, it seems, from the amount of stuff I post. But it's all got a purpose, and it's all aiming somewhere, and it's all details and stuff like that, thinking all the possible thoughts for the proper form of politics and governance and society and culture to be dominant so that we avoid dysfunction and so on. I know that even if no one listens to me, I'm a top performer at the moment on those things. But the problem is no one listens to me, so am I really doing anything good by focusing on that area of things? That's the question. Do I have the drawing in power of charisma or something? Or am I too esoteric and too much chaff for the amount of wheat I'm producing? It's a matter of presentation and so on to some extent. And I don't mean in the sort of rearranged deck chairs on the sinking Titanic kind of presentation. I mean like it's like a fundamental element of presenting myself because of the way I am naturally. Obsessive compulsive and driven towards all-out performance till exhaustion and crashing out or crashing and so on. It's a little like being Rock Lee, or is it Kenpachi from Naruto or Bleach, and looking at Kakashi and thinking maybe I should be more like him in some ways. Just chill, relax, use my natural talents and gifts, and let things come as they do, and focus on entertaining people and just appealing to people more. That's my weakness basically, is I've always been a very singular-minded, this is what I think kind of guy, and appealing to others more, not everyone, but some people at least, would seem to be a better approach to being actually useful, even if my top-tier performance suffers a little bit because I'm focusing a little bit on appealing to people. My top-tier theoretician, theory crafter performance drops a little bit because I'm focusing on the social element, basically, and actually connecting with people and so on. This video is going to be for posterity. I don't expect anyone to really watch it. But the takeaway, I guess, is I'm beginning to think I can relax and enjoy life because all of my top tier effort has paid off basically in the end. I've gotten one or two people's attention, and I've been an early adopter of the Aisha and Muhammad awareness raising of her being 9 when he boinked her when he was 53. I was an early adopter of that narrative and principled stance against Islam because of that and so on. So I've been an early adopter of virtuous things for the most part intellectually. And my midlife crisis was that I wasn't actually fully living up to that standard in my own embodiment. And now that I've gone through the fire personally, I can say that I think I've actually done that now. And also I've been an intellectual powerhouse in terms of actual knowledge. But I don't know if I've had any impact because of my relatability, communication style towards others being unappealing and so on. And the relaxation part is kind of like goes hand in hand with just vibing a little bit and not being so single-minded and diehard binge on efforts and then crash for a long time, and binge on efforts and crash for a long time, and so on. And I'm also beginning to think that This is going to sound weird because I mentioned all the things I've been through that prove that I'm a very barbarian warrior, worthy title holder, basically, on some level. Even if I don't look like it, even if I'm out of shape right now, even if all that, I've lived the life basically already. And at the same time, there's a problem in my mind of the ideal image of that. And even though I've lived so much in that direction, I can't live up to the ideal image. And the obsession with it is beginning to take its toll on me, I think. And one has to remember they are not ideal. And that's always been a problem for me because I've always strived to be perfect. And I think learning to be okay with not being perfect is actually going to save me and make me a better person. And not just morally or something like that, but in terms of actual effectiveness and so on. And the question then is your morals is there's utility and mechanical or mechanism oriented thinking, and there's interpersonal and moral level thinking. There's what's the right thing to do, because there's a cause and an effect, or a means and an end, and which one matters to you most. And what I'm learning from God through my midlife crisis and schizophrenia and so on is that there's some sort of mystical relationship between the two that actually lines up together both on some level better than just one or the other separately. And there's also a downward pull of trying to combine both the wrong way. And I'm just a little worried that if I do it wrong, I'll go both the wrong way instead of both the right way. Or like one or the other too much and go down as well. Which I'm not sure about, but you know what I mean. And at the same time, you know, this ideal image thing I mentioned earlier, the ideal paladin, the ideal barbarian kind of drive for me, you'll notice that there's not a lot of fun involved in that. There's wisdom, there's charisma, there's endurance or constitution, there's strength, but there's not a lot of fun. And maybe a little bit of cleric in it as well. But what I'm learning is I want to put the bard into that stuff. Have a little fun with it. And that's what the Kakashi versus Rock Lee or Kenpachi kind of experience is about, bringing out on some level and so on. For the anime characters and archetypes and character mimetic characters and so on in terms of style. I'm thinking of being more laid back and not focusing on preventing the end of the world and so on. Whether I succeeded in doing it, or whether I failed in doing it, it was just prevented anyways. I don't know. I want to have been useful, but I don't know if I actually was. And it's just a matter of it's not working out for me anymore, whether it was before or not. And it seems like most of the questions, the big questions, and the strategic decisions that someone who's a seeker in the depths of the collective unconscious, as Carl Jung would put it, would be useful on in a super serious capacity. And the building up part of things and growing things and making life things and so on needs a radical reorientation from destroy evil to create good. And I think that's what my like even like it's kind of difficult because it's like I'm super serious, single-minded, like thinking, okay, no more destroy evil, now to create good. And it's like purpose-driven and Jordan Peterson responsibility and like all that kind of mentality in some sense for my particular areas of strength, intellectually, mindfully, and mentally, and so on. But you know, it's a different mode of being to be super serious and silly fun. Um, you know, and I haven't been in that mode for some time, and I've always been driven away from that silly fun kind of mode to begin with. So it's weak in me, and I always feel guilty when I'm engaging in it. But it's really strong guilt this last 5 years. And I'm intellectually, rationally thinking I need to get into that mode more. But instinctually and habitually, I'm like, oh no, avoid it at all costs. Just focus on the super serious stuff and so on. Overwork yourself to death and so on. But I guess it's just a matter of habit at this point. The sort of you are what you repeatedly do kind of thing and so on. And I mean, even if I get into a gaming and bro gamer sort of chill session kind of stuff, I'll probably still talk about serious stuff a little bit while I'm playing games and so on. Um, it's sort of like a mixture of serious and fun, not just all silly fun. Probably, to be honest, it's sort of. I've got a huge cachet of wisdom gained from other people's life lessons and their experiences and watching them and their experiences and so on, and my own experiences. And I want to help share that stuff around, but I want to have fun doing it. And fun can include being a little more serious in a sense, but also adding a touch of playfulness to it. And my weakness has always been being too serious as opposed to playful. And it's just one of those things. I don't know how to put it. It's just one of those things. But if you're the kind of person that karoshis, and if you know what karoshi is death by overwork, then you understand my problem. I'm basically a Japanese salaryman in terms of mentality, without the job. So, and I was thinking of having fun as a job instead.